Bring the work session meeting for April 14th, 2022 to order. We'll go ahead and start with items of information with Dr. Spence.
Bring Dr. Whitehead up for COVID update.
Good afternoon.
So just our updates, not luckily they're easier to look at than we've had some other months. It'll start with community transmission index. You'll see that overall we've continued on a downward trend there and have actually changed our color profile on community index. And then the next slide is actually a new graphic that's been out for just a short while, and this is now a new CDC rating for your community that you can look at, and this shows us our coastal health district, and the green indicates that we're in a low community level for COVID at this point. And so CDC has it out there, and you can click on different areas across the country to find out. So if you're traveling or otherwise, you'll see that there. So, but thought it was interesting. Our whole coastal health district is in the green. Our next slide shows just that 7-day rolling average by report date. And as of yesterday afternoon, our 7-day rolling average is 0.6. And 13th of April for last year we were at 7.1. So April last year was on a downward trend as well. So it's interesting to see how that's starting to have that pattern over time. The next slide shows through yesterday afternoon. Yesterday there was one case confirmed in the district, or in Glen County. And again, that 7-day moving average is 0.6, and you can see how it's flatlined since the last time that we met, basically, looking at the chart. And then skipping over, the next one's there for context. The school-age children chart, again, blown up at the bottom just to show you more recent than, but you can see kind of the pattern behind it from the start of the collection of this data. And last week, there were 6 school-aged people in Glen County who tested positive. So that gives you that indicator. The next is our percentage of positive tests. Again, this has gone to green instead of being in the red where we had seen it for quite some time. An interesting development on this end, the state has gotten on board with a COVID test vending machine, and Glen County has been selected for their Department of Health to be one of the trial places for this machine. So it is coming. I don't have a delivery date yet or how that will work, but it will be set up and it will dispense COVID tests. The person would swab themselves, whatever, and deposit it back in, and the results would then be delivered to them on their cell phone after testing. So that, I guess, is just one way that they're looking to evolve into how we're just going to keep living with COVID in our midst. So thought that might be an interesting piece of information to have. Our past week data, you can see again the numbers by age group who tested positive. And then our slide showing our graph on April 1st, before we left for spring break, where we were. And as of today, we have 1 positive case in the district that's been reported. So it will mirror this unless there are changes overnight to the chart. So our chart tomorrow will be very similar, just a different school that will be marked there. So don't know if you have any questions related to COVID around those.
It's good to be green.
It is good to be in the green, yes.
Hospital hadn't slowed down, but it's not COVID now. It's other stuff. But thank goodness.
Yes, and Dr. Spence, would you like for me to jump
just
to
go down
proposed
to, yeah.
action items? So I have 3 items there to review. The first one is B, the Infinite Campus renewal. Again, Infinite Campus has been our student information system for quite some time, and this is our annual renewal with them to be able to continue allowing us to have that access through their product to keep all the information for our students. And we continue to add different modules that help us be more effective and more efficient with our data. And that renewal, including all the pieces that we have with them at this point in time, would be $120,976. And so that would be, again, our annual renewal for licenses with Infinite Campus. Do you have any questions related to that?
Does this renewal add any new modules?
It does not at this time. We added several modules over the last couple of years, and on some of those, we entered into those as early adopters, so our rate has not gone up for those that we've added. And we just continue to explore what other ones are out there. So we have a few more that we'll be looking at over the summer to determine whether we would add them moving forward. So we would bring that back to you if we decide to add those. The next proposed action item for Tuesday is item C for the strategic waiver system contract with the state. You may recall that our original contract started with the state around July 1st of 2016, where we made the decision to become a strategic waiver system, which allows us to waive certain state board rules and regulations to be able to have flexibility to benefit the system. We were coming up on the end of that contract review, so that we would have to find out how we were performing on our goals. And because of limitations in data related to COVID and lack of testing around the state, they have determined that there will not be enough data to be able to factor in our progress toward our goals. So the state has actually sent out this template to ask us to seek an amendment to extend the contract time. And so now it would move our contract term to June 30th, 2025. And that would be the point at which they would determine whether we've met our contract goals with them on this. So this is, again, it's a push from the state because they're not going to have the data to make those determinations. Are there any questions about moving forward with that? And Mr. Lakin did have a chance to review that one as well. And then lastly, it is, it's on the next page. It is item J. This this past legislative year, there was a new board rule, or new bill passed, Senate Bill 159, that allowed us to consider the use of 5 to 8 passenger vehicles for students with IEPs to be able to provide them with services that sometimes we are limited on based on the availability of transportation. And so with that bill, we looked to take some of the ARP funding, the American Rescue Plan funding that was specifically funneled for students with disabilities, to look to purchase 2 Ford Expeditions, which ended up being the vehicle that met all the specifications, 2 for each high school. And what it would allow us to do, if you approve this purchase, would have the ability to expand the work-based learning opportunities for our students in our access classrooms and our special ed programs at the high school. Right now, they're limited based on being able to get a bus to possibly take them to 1 or 2 locations, and so it also limits who we can approach about taking on our students, because that would give them a large number of students to work with at any given time. This would allow us to have staff that would not have to complete a complete CDL to be able to drive the students and get them to and from those work-based learning sites and expand those opportunities for those students. The vehicles would be, they are required for this purpose. They will be marked as Glen County Schools vehicles, and that they are transporting students, so that we'll have that. The only thing that's remaining at this point as far as regulations, the State Board of Education still has to make the final determination on what the exact qualifications that the driver has to have. What we do know so far, according to what we've seen, is that they will have to go into a pool for, just like our bus drivers, for drug testing, random drug testing, an annual physical exam. They are debating at the state whether or not they would require them to complete what we currently have activity bus drivers complete, which is just short of the CDL licensing, or if they're going to have them complete more than that. And there would be a requirement for annual safety training that would be required for anyone who's going to drive the vehicles. So I don't know if you have any questions or concerns with that opportunity.
I heard the shuttle buses we bought some time ago, they at full capacity for us being able to use those. And I know that you don't have to have a CDL to drive those, so are we at capacity with regard to those?
I'm not sure. The thought is, though, that this may have less limitations on the driver of having to have the extra training. We still, with the activity buses, they have to complete so many hours with students on the bus and,
Sure.
and those things. And the flexibility. I honestly would have to check and find out the degree that those are used
Do
at
we
this
know
point.
what those shuttle buses, I'm sure they've gone up, but do we know what they cost when we first purchased them per unit? About, I mean, I might want to hold you to it, but
Were they in the 75 or 100,000 range? I can't remember. Something was like 112. Yeah, I think like 112 or something rings a bell for me, but these would each cost $48,890 based on the bid that Ms. Saunders put out to get bids on those.
And you said 2 at each high school?
2 for each high school. And again, supporting those students that have IEP goals to increase their opportunities in the community.
and let me ask you one more time just to clarify, is this law or a state board rule or?
The legislation is law that we are allowed to transport them in this type of vehicle versus a school bus.
So we're allowed, not required in this type of
That's
vehicle?
correct.
Okay.
That's
Gotcha.
correct. We're allowed to.
We're just trying to help alleviate the bus drivers.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that was what my thought was behind the, I mean, you obviously transport more kids in the shuttle buses. I know they're more expensive, and you don't have to have a CDL to drive those either.
How many passengers would that vehicle hold, do we know?
I think that they were designated to hold up to 8. I think it's that third seat
With the
kind of
driver,
vehicle.
Including the
Mhm. But again, based on the needs of the students, you know, we might have 3 students in
I'm
there,
sure.
or, you know, whatever, based on the actual needs for each group of students that we're taking out.
Right.
So would there be an additional staff member on the bus with the driver? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Typically, the paraprofessionals go out with them to help in those situations as well. And because of limitations with staff and drivers, we've had some additional concerns with the buses not making it back to pick up students, and the employer was expecting them to be there, let's say, from 1 to 2:30. Well, then the bus doesn't show up. So then the employer's trying to figure out, what are we gonna do while this child is still here waiting for transportation to come back for another 45 minutes or an hour? So this kind of alleviates a little bit of that concern, because our actual staff members would be transporting with them.
I mean, could you handle the load with 2 shuttle buses as opposed to 4 expeditions?
I think numbers-wise, I'm just not sure. It still opens up the number of places that you could get to with kids. Like I said, like now, if you've got one vehicle and it's got to make the rounds to several sites, then we're limited that maybe they only get to go out, the students only get to go out a couple of times a week, because you're only able to
Right.
take so many kids to each site.
Sure.
Whereas if we had the 2 at the school, they could go in different directions in the county and take students to different locations. So
Is it-
that's just the
Is
thinking.
the grant we apply for every year, or?
This is part of like the CARES Act funding,
So
and it
that
was, it was specifically designated for
The next question is,
students with
so
disabilities.
when we need 4 new expeditions, is it gonna come out of general fund more than likely?
If we find that it does fulfill the need that we have, or either through IDA grant funding that we do get
I mean, I'll quit
annually.
beating around the bush. I mean, I just, you know, the optics, it's kind of like with the new SRO vehicles that I had an issue with. I mean, do we need every single vehicle to be fully equipped? Do we need 4 brand-new Glynn County Schools expeditions driving around town? The optics of that, and y'all aren't gonna hear it, we are, and that's fine. But I'm just telling you the optics of people that are paying the taxes of the community, whether it's CARES Act money or whatever, it's eventually gonna fall on local tax, and we know how that goes. Once we approve something, generally we keep it, you know, and we'll find a way to pay for it. I think the program obviously is worthwhile, but that's the reason I question. You know, we're having issues getting kids to sporting events and getting kids to other places. That's where we started with the shuttle buses. You don't have to have a CDL. Anybody can drive. You just have to have some extra training, that sort of thing. But now we're going to put 2 employees and you're spending money on things that we're going to have to replace one day too. I just wonder if there's a better way to do it. But certainly a worthwhile program. Don't get me wrong. But I just wonder if it's the best use of money, but, that's all.
Any other questions for Dr. Whitehead?
Thank you.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Spence. Just wanted to give you all an update on as we continue to move towards a new financial management solution. Continue to do the work on that, just to go through a couple slides with you here. So, as we mentioned back at the March work session, we put out a request for proposal through Ms. Saunders, and those were due back on March 25th. We received 3 proposals from 3 vendors. 2 of those actually submitted complete proposals. 1 was lacking, so we've disqualified that vendor. So we're down to 2 vendors that we're looking at. We did form an evaluation team. Dr. Spence and I kind of consulted on that, and we came up with 16 district employees on that team. Covers every area of finance, covers HR, covers purchasing, covers school food, nutrition. Kind of the most of the users who use the bulk of the package every day is who we were trying to involve in that. And one thing, we've set up vendor demonstrations with the 2 vendors. We've got one scheduled for April the 21st, and then one scheduled for April 27th. So those will be coming up soon. In those, we're going to have the evaluation team. We're also going to include any other team members. I tried to keep the evaluation team from getting too large, but we want to make sure everybody, like in finance, we've got one person from each area, but in the demos, I'd like to have pretty much everybody in there from finance, and that just, to me, makes sense. And then after that, we're going to do 2 site visits, Bryan County schools and Bullitt County. Pick those because they both use the vendors for a long period of time. They're close. And they're similar in size to us. They're smaller, but they're similar. So they're going to use a lot of the same modules we use. I've talked to both of their CFOs, so they both have, over 20 years experience with the 2 vendors. So I think that'll be crucial. So when we go to site visits, we're not going to take the whole evaluation team because I don't want to take 16. So there are some areas, but we're going to take enough to cover each function. I don't want to bombard a school district by bringing 16 to 20 people. So I've got it set up with Bullitt County where we're going to go May 10th. Bryan County is supposed to be getting me back some dates. So we're continuing to move forward there. Once we finish with the vendor demonstrations and the site visits, we'll come back together as a team. We put evaluation criteria in the proposal. It covers 5 different areas. Cost being 20% of that. It also covers, we're going to look at the corporate strength, the application functionality, technical infrastructure, and then implementation and support services is very huge. We put 25% weight on that because one thing I heard from other districts is, and I think I may have mentioned this back in March, we want on-site implementation and training. We don't want it through a video. We don't want it through. I tell you what happened with COVID is a lot of districts that switched software ended up not having people actually on site. We don't want that. We want people on site to do the training and the during the implementation phase. I think we just get more out of that. So once we complete that evaluation, the proposed timeline, and we had to move this. I originally was shooting for May, but definitely don't want to rush into this because it's a huge decision for the district. Once we decide on this vendor, we want it to be a long-term relationship. We don't want to do this in 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and turn around and do it again. So we want to make a commitment. So in order to get the site, spring break kind of factored into that too. In order to get the vendor demonstrations and the site visits in, push this back to June. So what we would like to do is bring a recommendation at the June work session as a committee team for consideration of approval at the June 7th board meeting. And then that'll kind of get us into the summer and we'll start talking. And what the vendors will do when they come to their demonstrations, they'll talk to their implementation strategies, timelines, that kind of stuff. They put them in the proposals, but one, was, I think, it was a shorter time frame. The other one, it wasn't really spelled out, so we'll ask those questions when we get to into the demonstration. So, but that's just kind of a brief update. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I think we'll have a lot more information, in May after we do the vendor demonstrations and kind of go through that. So.
Would y'all be opposed to us, and this is not typical, don't get me wrong, we don't want to ask questions or anything like that. Would it be okay for us to sit in on this if we had time for the initial meetings?
Sure.
Presentations?
Yeah.
If you don't mind sending them to us, just if anybody can make it, just to
be
a silent witness in the bag to hear their initial proposals and just see.
Yeah, because the demonstrations would just give you a general overview, and I can send out the agendas, and then you can kind of, they basically have carved out, like an hour and a half to talk about the company as a whole.
Right.
Then it gets into specific areas, finance, HR, payroll.
Right.
I think the other vendor has an interview session at the end where we get to, that's
Gotcha.
where we get to ask questions, and that's where we can.
I don't know
really
that anybody would be interested in, but maybe if y'all aren't opposed to it, just to.
Yeah, I'll send those dates out, and I'll send out the tentative agenda.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Graham? All right,
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Preston?
Okay, so for the FY23 budget update, we'll start with property taxes. Tuesday, I did receive a preliminary property digest from Mr. Glynn, but was told it did not include all of Senate Bill 486 exemptions or new sales and revals, so I think we need to wait. He said we'll probably get the final one mid-May, which his final one is usually pretty close to what the digest comes in, not you know, exact, but anyway. I actually increased the property values that we used to 3% on the March estimate for budget, but I bumped it up to 4%. I was kind of looking at the 5-year average, and we all know that properties around here are selling like crazy, and they're selling for way over the asking price. So I have a feeling, you know, we're going to have a good increase to the digest, but we'll see. So at 4% with the same millage rate, that generates $4.6 million. And Mr. Holsey had wanted to know what millage reduction would be at 0.25, so that's in yellow. And I printed this out because online it's like sideways, I think, the attachment. So if you reduce the millage rate 0.25 based on 4% increase, yeah, you would get $3.3 million in real property tax revenues. So that would decrease your revenues by about 1.3. Just on a side note, last year's rollback rate was 3.91.
Yeah, I think I was probably losing a little bit when I even threw that out. I just wanted to see what rollback was. I didn't
Yeah.
really think we should do that or that would be possible, but.
Well, the problem is I don't know the rollback rate till we actually get the digest.
And that's probably still not going to be feasible with what we're trying to do with teacher raises and stuff like that. And I
yeah.
understand. I just would like to continue to look at that 0.25
Yeah.
going into next month and see what it looks like when Ron gets us the good
Yeah,
firm numbers.
hopefully he'll give it to me before our work session, but I don't
Right.
know.
I didn't mean to, I just asked that question in an email a few weeks ago just because I thought it was important, and we've been realizing some additional tax revenue. We've been able to do a lot of great things, and thought it'd be nice to give a little bit of that back. I don't know what it would really amount to, but a $0.25 reduction, with inflation the way things are right now and everything else, I thought it'd be a good thing to try to at least look at so we can make a decision based on leaving it the same and reducing by $0.25. So.
And of course, you know, you don't have to vote on that actually until
Right.
August, but, so when we get the real digest, we can look at it.
Thank y'all for doing that.
And then for the state revenues, that number has changed because the last scenario I gave you, I had added back the austerity reduction. Well, they actually wiped it out with the FY22 budget amendment. So they wiped out our austerity reduction, which was 2.3, but they raised our local fair share by 1.3 million. So basically, we got an increase of almost $1 million with the FY22 budget amendment that was passed. So that increase is reflected in your beginning revenues on this summary sheet. We've talked about the small increase in the TRS rate. We've talked about the state salary increases, and I just put those out there as an attachment again. There is supposed to be a state increase for nurses. I'm trying to get clarification on what that dollar amount is, because they throw out a percentage of 5.4, but it's based on a base salary amount that they use, not what you pay. So I'm waiting to get that from them. Then salary step increases, you know, people moving from, you know, year 5 to year 6 on the pay scale. The certified is about $1 million. The non-certified is almost $500,000. The local raises that we talked about, I attached that document again. I don't know if you want to go through it all again. There's various levels of raises, and these raises are based on the salary survey that we participate in with First District RESA, and Dr. Spence wanted to be, our positions to be at least in the top 3 in the RESA, and that means we needed to adjust teacher pay, starting and ending teacher pay. So we are actually adding an additional step onto the teacher salary scale to 25th year, as well as increasing every year by $1,300. Are there any questions on that one?
Have y'all started, I think y'all probably have, y'all started, I know this has been disseminated a little bit, but have y'all had some meetings with
We've met with
faculty and staff about?
almost every school.
Right.
The cabinet's met with almost every school after school. And for instance, today we met at Burroughs Millette. Yesterday we were at Glen Middle, and we talked to them about this.
And the raises differ by category, and that's basically because some categories of employees that we have were lower than the third, like 5th and 6th. So not the raises aren't the same across the board.
Right.
So I think some employees are having a little bit of heartburn with that, but we're trying to get everybody in the top 3, and the difference, that's why they're so different. We just didn't do a blanket dollar amount. I mean, food service and drivers needed the biggest bump, and parapros. We did all of our allotments, staffing allotments before spring break. And the last 2 pages of the attachment shows the reduction in force numbers and the new position numbers. And this is just the general fund. Well, I can talk about the, they're going to talk about the Horizons Academy, which is all CARES Act funded at this point. But these numbers here are just for the general fund. So the reduction in force is a total of $2.9 million. It's 36 positions. I know that sounds like a lot, but a lot of these are vacancies that haven't even been filled a lot this year. So I know you've heard me say our elementary school enrollment is going down every year. And I've kind of left those class sizes really low because of COVID, and thinking that, you know, they needed the extra help in the smaller class sizes. This is the 3rd year, and their numbers are still going down. So we have vacant positions, and we're trying to fill holes with long-term subs, and I think the staff agrees that it's better to have a certified teacher in front of 20 kids instead of maybe a non-certified person in front of 16. So we're riffing about 9 positions at the elementary school level, teacher positions, and 6 parapro positions. The other changes here are just, we're moving a CABS class from Glendale to Sterling. We are, and the cabinet can talk about this better than me, they have decided to repurpose the admin at the elementary and middle schools, and they're riffing the instructional coaches and adding assistant principals, a third one at middle school and a second one at elementary schools. Now, our 3 highest poverty inner city elementary schools that are 80% or higher in free and reduced lunches are adding academic coaches to them with Title I funds.
There's actually 4.
4.
We added that 4th one.
And let's see, the other changes. So the RIF positions are 36, but the new positions, with adding back assistant principals, we've had to add about 7 SPED teachers for increased segments needed to be served to students, and 1 ELL teacher for increased segments for ELL students. So we're going to net about 4.5 reduction in staff for the general fund, and it's a savings of $101,500 difference for the general fund. So those tie back to your front sheet that have your RIF positions and your new positions. I think I talked about last time the decrease in the department budget. That's several leases that are expiring and we're not needed to renew. And then I did add an estimate for the financial package of $650. I just chose that because that's what Camden paid back in 2016, and I know the two packages, there's a big difference in their pricing, so I just stuck a ballpark number in there just so you would know that is need to be a line item for next year.
Yeah, that's a good ball. I mean, it depends on which modules you go with, but I mean, it probably won't be on that high end. It'll be, but it depends again on what modules. So, and that would be the annual fee. Either vendor has an annual maintenance fee you have to pay, so outside of the implementation cost.
So, and also I left on here just as a line item, so a mental note for you. This school year, we budgeted $5.5 million to be moved to the local capital projects fund because that represents the excess of 15% over our fund balance. So that is still in the budget and will roll over to next year. So we'll be adding that to the local capital projects fund, which currently has a fund balance of $7.5 million. We bought 5.5 in buses and other cars this year out of there. Anyway.
What's the difference between an academic coach and an instructional coach? Is academic coach focused on teachers, or are they focused more on students?
It's going to be more like a lead teacher. It'd be a 190-day contract.
Okay.
And we had ILTs in the past. It's going to be a little different than that in that they're not truly going to be evaluative in any manner or anything like that. They will basically be there to assist the teachers with curriculum needs. If we have so many new teachers, they're going to be there to help support
Right.
that transition.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Are there any questions about next year's budget? All right, and then I have February's financial updates on the list. So this time of year, I typically look to see how our local taxes are doing and in each category. And again, our intangible recording tax, which is refinancing tax that you pay, is up. So I went ahead and increased that revenue budget by about $300,000 because several years now, you know, people have been refinancing like crazy, and we've been that's just been excess is going into fund balance. So budgeted revenues were increased by $300,000 to adjust the intangible recording tax. He's got it up. Budgeted revenue expenditures were decreased by $77,300 to remove the bus replacement allotment. We had an allocation last year for one bus replacement, even though our buses cost $130-something thousand. But we didn't get it this year, so I took that out of the budget. And then we received a donation of $5,000 for a teacher externship donation program. That's that $250 per teacher, if you want to explain that. I don't recall what that's about.
The chamber, we did the teacher externship program where the teachers went into local businesses, and then the chamber gave each of those teachers $250 to spend on things that they learned to help their students.
So we did a budget amendment and assigned it to each school so that this teacher can spend it out of their principal's budget. The year-to-date revenues represent 84% of the budget. The local tax receipts for February 1.5. Year-to-date expenditures represent 63.6, but we're 66.7% through the year, so there's our savings again. If you look at the summary page for the general fund, salary and benefits are about 64.1% through the year, and they're running about 62% behind budget. So we're going to end up saving money there again.
Can I go back a step for just a second? We don't need to change slides or anything, but going back to the new APs at the middle and elementary schools, two questions. Have we posted the AP positions yet? We have.
We've posted, interviewed, and are presenting names tonight.
Okay, nice. Okay, and then secondly, and this may be too soon for this, but do you anticipate you know, if you have two APs now at an elementary school, do you anticipate one being discipline and one being, you know, instruction, or kind of mix, or how would you?
Well, we definitely anticipate both of them being able to support discipline and the academics, the instruction in the building. And in our current structure, and not to say that ICs aren't valuable, because we definitely think that the work that they've done has been significant, but what we currently have created is just that APs are focused on discipline and not obviously teacher development.
Right.
And so you got somebody evaluating me who potentially doesn't even understand the curriculum that I'm teaching, right? And so we want to improve the practice instructionally, and so that's the focus for all the APs to essentially, with the exception of the APIs at the high school,
Right.
but K-8 for all of them to be behavior and academics.
Thank you.
I'm trying to say this the right way. When we have interviewed for principals the last few times, it's been a pretty easy pick. It shouldn't be that way. We should have 5 or 6 candidates in there from Glen County that are knocking our socks off, and we should have a difficult choice. And I don't think we've done a good job of preparing people to be principals, and this should help us do that, because they'll be having to take on the role of handling discipline, dealing with parents, dealing with teachers, helping them, doing evaluations, and dealing with students. So,
And some of the things they'll be tasked with in schools, maybe non-negotiables as far as the district goes, but then principals would have some autonomy within their school. Say if they wanted one to do their math instruction K-5 and one to do the reading instruction K-5,
Sure.
they could do that, they could make that choice. But then there'll be some things like, you know, just regular duties and tasks, discipline, for example, that needs to be K-2, so those relationships can be built with those kids,
Right.
with each of those assistant principals.
Okay, thank you.
And the last bit I have is the East Plus sales tax collections. They were 20% higher this February than last February. And based on the cash flow we looked at from Steve Salmon, we'll probably be fully collected June of 2025, if we stay on this track.
So with that said, with the money we've transferred to capital projects funds and with the excess money we're receiving from East Plus, I know we've got some of that earmarked for things, but we've talked a few times about additional small project lists that we want to try to look at, because I don't know if everybody hears, I do hear some feedback about, you know, brand new school but potholes in the parking lot. You know what I mean? So I think it's time to kind of drill down on, you know, I'll just say Greer, for example. You know, there's flooding every time it rains out there, and there's potholes in the parking lot. We're all these schools look great. We're spending a lot of money on, but are we finishing all the things that kind of add to it too, or could take away if you don't fix those certain things? So we've talked about, I would like to get to the point where we actually see a working list, maybe by school or however it works. Can we start making that a part of our, you know, when Mr. Two presents, or Good, or whomever, or when Mike.
that's what we're waiting on.
Okay.
For that.
Sure.
We're a little
I understand.
undermanned there.
I understand.
And just so you know, the local capital projects fund that we have, like another use that we use it for is East Plus 2. We finally have finished. We got the last state receipts for the re-roof for East Plus 2, and we can finally close that out. And we're working with Steve Salmon to reconcile, make sure, you know, what he has and what we have agree. And it looks like we're going to probably transfer about $250,000 from our local capital projects fund to move it into East Plus 2 to zero it out. So that's another use of that fund, those funds.
Thank you, Ms. Preston.
All right.
Let's see here. Mr. Tootin.
Yes, sir. Kind of afraid of microphones. I'll take these projects one at a time based on when we started the projects. New Altama Elementary School, we've made final inspections and we still have a final completion list underway, and we will release the rest of the contractor's money when he finishes the job. The Glen Academy Gym addition is going well. The contractor reports he's on schedule. It appears that he is, and we expect occupancy in July of this year. St. Simon's Elementary School also is going well. The contractor reports that he is on schedule for the completion of a new 2-story building in December 2022. And so we would expect that facility to be occupied in January. And at that time, we would then proceed with the next phase of the work. And of course, there are several phases. I'll remind you briefly that once that's done, then there'll be a portion of the buildings demolished before new construction can begin. Then there'll be a new PE facility, administration addition, and new kitchen. Those projects will be constructed concurrently. And when they are completed, then we will move into renovation of the 1943 building. So that will be a several-year project from here, and we will continue to update that schedule. We do have a list of summer work that we're going to install this summer so that the school will not be disrupted by a new sanitary sewer line extending out into Ocean Boulevard and other preparatory work to run some utilities and things through the existing building so that after school begins again in the fall of this year, the basic work to get from the new building where our new intercom base will be and new fire alarm base will be extended through the 43 building into the new buildings so that the 43 building won't be disturbed again until it's time for its renovation. Needwood Middle School, the first wing of renovation is completed and occupied. The second wing is underway. The cafeteria, gym, and administrative spaces will be done during the summer. And kitchen renovations are in design and will be completed at the end of the summer 2023. So I would expect that some of the other common facilities may not be totally completed in the summer of 2022, but we'll get an updated schedule for the contractor about that. Golden Isles is on track to be completed July 2022, and that appears on schedule, and we expect that building to be fully completed and ready for occupancy in July. We've run into a lot of unforeseen work in the kitchen. All the plumbing under the floor is being replaced. New range hood and makeup air is being installed. A lot of duct work, new electrical work in the kitchen. The kitchen was kind of a mess. And the original budget didn't foresee this extensive kitchen work. So I think that will be considered later.
And we're going to do that now?
We can.
Yeah. 3K is a change order.
What we're asking you to do is to increase the contingency fund by $250,000 for final completion. We've gone over that with the contractor item by item and included an allowance for future unforeseen things. Kinds of things that we're running into is, for example, the plumbing system doesn't drain from the coach's office in the gym, and that means interrupting the floor, getting into the floor, patching the plumbing drainage system, and then patching the floor again. We don't expect any more of those kinds of things. Had a similar issue in the administrative building toilets. But we certainly think this covers it, and that we'll be returning money to the project at the end of the project. Oglethorpe Point, or Oglethorpe Point Elementary School, the first wing is completed and occupied, and the second wing is underway. And the same process will be occurring at Oglethorpe Point. There will be extensive work done during the summer of 2022 and the summer of 2023, and we'd expect Needwood and Oglethorpe Point to be completed in July of 2023. Satilla Marsh renovations are underway. We're working on construction documents, and we are carefully evaluating systems in Satilla Marsh, which we did not have an opportunity to do in terms of the 3 renovation projects that were done at the same time on a tight schedule. So we will have those plumbing systems tested, and but we expect to award a construction contract in the fall, finish our documents in the summer of this year, and then the contractor will have lead time to get materials ordered, things on site, and don't have a detailed schedule for Satilla Marsh yet. Satilla Marsh is going to be more difficult because there is a larger student load per classroom, so we will not be able to take half a wing at a time. It doesn't appear, but we're working with staff, and Mr. Blackerby was and will continue to do so to come up with a schedule that's tolerable in terms of the school occupancy.
We've already applied for state funds for Satilla Marsh, so we have to move forward with that. We don't have an option. With the other things on the East lots, we have not applied for state funds yet. So, Dwayne Bradham is here also. He's kind of taken on a lot of responsibilities with Mr. Blackerby's situation, and so y'all have any questions for him or Mr. Tootin at this time?
I would respond to Mr. Hosey's observation about things that are undone at Greer, for example, and drainage issues. We're trying to discover all of those at each renovation as we move along.
Sure.
So, for example, Needwood, and as well as Satilla Marsh and Greer, we designed several years ago a canopy extension,
right,
so that there's additional cover walk.
Right.
We included that into the Needwood project. We are dealing with underground utilities at Needwood has been a challenge, but I know at Satilla Marsh there's some driveway work that needs to be done, and of course it doesn't seem like these facilities have been occupied for 25 years, but every 25 years or so you might have to patch some paving, and so we'll try to get that under control, or as a part of the scope of the work when we do each of these future renovation projects.
I appreciate that. It wasn't necessarily a reflection on, East Plus or the plans or
Sure.
anything that you all have done. I'll give you another example. One is, there have been a lot of complaints over the years about the driveway at Glen Middle. So when you turn into the parking lot at Glen Middle and you go to the carpool line, there's essentially one lane. We try to make it 2. It tears up the grass, tears up irrigation, everything else. Then it moves into 2, and I've been asking, gosh, Al was still here. We talked about, it doesn't have to be East Lots funds, but we have money. It's not maintaining your roof at your house. You know what I'm saying? So there are things that I've asked about over and over again that I still don't know if they've been completed. My kids aren't at Glen Middle anymore, so I don't hear it as much. But I don't know if that's been completed or not. It's just a simple increase of an eyebrow. So
Right.
why, if we don't have the capacity to do some small projects like that within our internal maintenance department, not including you necessarily.
Sure.
We should have that capacity as a system to handle some of things like that. With $7.5 million in the capital projects fund, we should be able to take care of some of those things and knock them out and get them done.
Right.
And so if it requires moving a main line and doing things like that, it's really pretty simple work compared to other things we're doing. So those are the little things I'm talking about where the frustration is growing a little bit with regard to those things we've asked about. And so, why aren't those getting done as well? If we don't have the capacity, we need to figure out, how we can get those things done. The canopies are great, and I think there's something we all agree we need. And there's a lot of cost involved in planning and design and that sort of thing, but I'm talking more about regular maintenance stuff,
Sure.
Too, so.
Yeah. Glen Academy gym renovations, we have begun that, and I think we spoke to that, or Mike did the last time that we were here. We're developing a schedule for summer work. We hope during the summer to install a new sound system, handrails at the aisles, and new lighting in the arena, and some other incidental items so that they will be ready for the basketball season 2022 this year. The balance of that renovation work, there's going to be some fairly extensive plumbing work done in showers and things down in the locker rooms. We've got to make some changes in public toilets in order to make them handicapped accessible. And so that work we will have to schedule, and we've talked with Mr. Waters and other staff about how we're going to manage that. And sitting here today, we don't know exactly how that schedule will follow, but perhaps it will follow the pattern of the heating and air conditioning, so that after basketball season, we'll then schedule some disruptions in that building that can be tolerated, because by that time you'll have new dressing facilities and a new practice court and so forth in the addition that's being done. And then Glen Academy Annex repairs is something that came up a month and a half or so ago, and there's some flooring problems on the first floor, and we've just gotten an inspection report with some photographs. Haven't had a chance to analyze those in detail yet, but next meeting we'll certainly give you a report as to what we think is going on and how to remedy the problem.
Any questions, guys? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good report.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'm Sabrina Shepherd. I'm the controller for Good. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you all around Christmas time.
Right.
Y'all are probably expecting Matt Samuelson, but he had a tragic loss, so he had to fly out early to go to a viewing. So I'm going to do my best to answer any questions. If y'all have something I'm not sure of, I'll get with Jean and Steve and get back with you guys as soon as possible. But Steve did go over everything and give me some talking points. On page 1, 3 of the projects that he really wanted me to point out, and I know Mr. Tooten's, he touched on some of these. On the Performing Arts project, the Board of Regents, they're in the process of selecting the A&E, CM, and the PM for the project. And once that's done, then the schedule will be adjusted on here. The auxiliary gym, it's moving well and it's on schedule. And then Altama Elementary, they've actually been in the school for a while, but they're now in the final correction and closeout process, and so it should be totally finished soon on there. On page 2, this is just 2 and 3 is kind of going through the details of what Mr. Tooten spoke on about the projects, and this is by project. Page 3 is just by budget item, and that should be a handout that Mrs. Brick gave you guys. Page 4 is the screen grab from the Department of Revenue, and as Andrea touched on, you guys received $2.4 million in e-loss. Then page 5 is just the graph of your monthly receipts, just showing how it's trending. And on page 6 is the projected actual in previous years. And as you can see, you guys, we went conservative with the $2 million going out, but currently East Loss receipts are averaging right now around $2.5 million, so you guys are in great shape on revenue. And if y'all continue to collect at this level, you guys are going to max out that $112 million within 4 years instead of 5. Yeah, it's a great thing. Page 7, this is your East Loss 4, and it's this project list. Everything's moving well. It's on schedule. There still will be a while before any of the to-be-determined projects are scheduled out. And then 8 and 9 is, again, just your cost by project and by budget item. Do you have any questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Revenue goals is pretty good.
All right. Glen Learning Center updates.
Okay, so in response to some of the social emotional issues that we've been seeing with students this year and since COVID, as well as some behavioral issues that we've all been hearing about this year, we felt that there's a need for some proactive intervention for our kids. So Dr. Green and I have worked, and alongside Ms. Haywood, Dr. Whitehead, we've tried to come up with a plan to present to you all in re-imaging what currently is GLC, which is a punitive place where we send kids when they've been to tribunal. So we want to re-image what GLC stands for and make it what we envision being Horizons Academy. Okay, so this is like a presentation. Mr. Haywood would still be the special programs. Right now he's the coordinator, but when you see the bulk of everything he's doing, we're asking possibly for him to be a special programs director. That's why that's italicized, because that's up in the air. But that when you see the scope of the work and the supervision that he's going to have to do over at Horizons, you know, we think he would be worthy of that.
And 44 staff members in the
Yeah.
new plan.
Yeah, so the next slide kind of gives an overview of what Glen Learning Center would be changing to. And when we pitch this out, we want to pitch it out to our community as a positive place for kids to be able to help them in ways that regular ed school settings can't help them. Smaller class sizes, we're going to be doing a lot of training with the staff that's hired over there with brain-based research and how to handle kids when they're in certain parts of their brain. If you know anything about brain research, you know when kids are in the brainstem, they're not listening, they're not responding, but yet we have, us as adults, we want an immediate response from them, but they're not even hearing us at that point. So we need to train ourselves in how to deal with those kids as well. So doing a lot of emotional poverty work through Dr. Ruby Payne. We may even have her come in to train the staff in person. She's coming to train our administrators this summer with emotional poverty. So that would be one way to try to reach the kids that are there, as well as mindset de-escalation strategies, 7 mindsets, the social emotional curriculum that Ms. Haywood has been instrumental in getting implemented over at GLC this year. So what we want to do is, after kids have reached a certain tier in their regular general ed school setting, meaning we have provided additional behavior supports, we have provided everything we can in that general ed setting, and those kids are still not responding and still not having a positive experience in school, and they're still causing disruption in classrooms. We want to be able to have that student go to Horizons Academy, and if you'll flip to the next slide, you can kind of
And
see.
essentially our interventions are going to be something that's more therapeutic and obviously more preventive, opportunity to teach kids coping skills, to teach them how to self-regulate, how to pause, how to know when they're triggered, and what to do when they're triggered. And so we think that this is the best approach to doing that. I know, STARS came up at one point and we wanted to respond with something that was going to be sustainable over time, but also beneficial to our students. We didn't want it to just be time served. We wanted it to be an opportunity to teach and for students to learn. We know that positive behaviors aren't being reinforced in most of these homes, where our small majority of students who are misbehaving and showing patterns of behavior, it's just not happening at home. And so we know that our regular ed teachers have limited opportunity when trying to teach curriculum to also try to teach a student how to do some of these specialized skills that they need. And so this is the site for that, essentially.
So currently at the GLC site, it's housed at RACS. We have Glen Learning Center, which is there already. That's across the first line, and that's when students are in trouble with tribunal or they're signing waivers because of an incident that's happened at their home school, and that's a placement there, and that's a punitive placement for them. And that kind of tells you that's funded through the district. Coastal Academy, I'm not going to read it to you. I know you all can read that, but Coastal Academy is funded through First District RESA GNETs, as well as some district funds as well, and with the grant from GNET. So within the next year, Coastal Academy funding is going to come to a halt. And so Coastal Academy, they're giving us 1 year, this upcoming year, to try to decide what we're going to do with those students that are attending Coastal Academy right now. So this may be an outlet for some of those students. If we can see a lot of success this year with this program, that may be an outlet for some of the students that are at Coastal Academy for the following year.
The state was going to take away the GNET's funding completely, but then we asked them, as a group of superintendents, we asked them to at least give us 1 year so we could decide. But they were going to take it out of the budget and us have to deal with those kids next year. So we're going to they're going to allow us to keep the GNET's funding and run it the way we've been running it the last 5 or 6 years. For 1 year.
Yeah, so also at GLC campus right now is the Morningstar program, which is district and grant funds as well. So the programs, the 3 programs in white are currently on site already at GLC. So Dr. Green, do you want to talk about the 2 in yellow, which would be our ESSER funded programs, would be the ones we're implementing new?
Absolutely. I'm a little frustrated with the PowerPoint because it looked prettier when we shared it than it is now. But so I apologize for that, not the color choices. But Bright Beginnings, again, is that K-8 Tier 3 intervention program where students go for excessive issues with behavior and that are just exhibiting a pattern of behavior in crisis when it comes to behavior. And that could be traumatic, or it could just be they haven't been, positive behaviors haven't been reinforced, and teachers are having issues. And so you see in the staffing column a lot of additional positions to support those individuals. A max of 45 because we have 3 teachers, and we don't believe that a classroom of 15 plus, more than 15 would be ideal to try to support those students. And each classroom would have a teacher and a behavior para who's responding immediately to outbursts, responding immediately to negative or disruptive behaviors, and pulling students and having teachable moments with them. The counselor on staff will serve all of the programming, but is specifically targeted for Bright Beginnings to be able to counsel, utilizing the 7 mindsets that Ms. Haywood has acquired for the program, some other additional strategies. And so we really essentially want to wrap around those students in that program. There is an opportunity to, and we're exploring what it would look like, but in lieu of suspension, possibly having students to actually go to this program. So you get suspended 10 days, and we may offer 7 days at Bright Beginnings, and then that's an opportunity because parents have to opt in for that student to be a part of the programming and get some of those self-regulating strategies. And if it's a fight, an opportunity for the 2 kids to come together with a counselor and do mediation. So we're still exploring what that would look like because we don't want to tax teachers with having to send work, and so we have to work out the logistics for instruction and getting the kids back and forth with transportation. But it is an opportunity there for us to do that in lieu of suspension. The newcomer site is the program that's specifically for our students new to the country. I think, and the number has changed, but January to March there were like 51 new to the country students to Glen County. I need to get a more accurate number because I obviously want to give you all the current numbers that we have, but in that program there will be a bilingual social worker, a bilingual teacher, and a bilingual parent. Students are only in this program part of the day. They'll be supported at their schools, obviously with an ESOL teacher, but I can tell you most of our ESOL teachers, I think we may have one that's bilingual, so when a student is coming to get support from someone who doesn't understand what they're saying, that's much more difficult, obviously. And so we want to increase success by having somebody that's bilingual supporting them and helping them with their work, but also wrapping around the entire family, because a lot of the issues that the students exhibit at school stem from the issues that they have in the home.
And one thing about Bright Beginning, it's not a permanent placement for students. It would be a place where students go for 6 to 9 weeks. So that intervention specialist, that's what they would be monitoring while that child's there. Is the intervention being, what's being done, what's being successful with each kid, communicating back to that homeschool. Hey, this is what they're doing with this child, so be ready when the child comes back to homeschool to have that intervention ready for this child, because it's worked at this setting, it can work at this setting as well. So that's going to be a communication person between the school and Bright Beginnings staff, as well as
that's the transition specialist.
The transition specialist, and then the intervention specialist would be there as well to monitor that.
Where do they have that program at?
In Henry County, they have one very similar to it, the Henry School of Scholars.
Yeah.
Dr. Green actually visited.
Yeah, it's a K-5 program. It's not K-8. But a lot of our issues are, K-8 right now, and so we wanted to try to extend it to where we saw all of our issues.
Is there any data or proof that it's going to help from 5 to 8?
I don't have any data from that particular site. We are hoping to have impact in 2 years because it is CARES funded, and make a decision at the end of the 2 years. But we have seen a spike in our numbers of students having outbursts, students having behaviors, referrals to tribunal. I have 7 pending right now. Ms. Haywood has 7 hearings scheduled for next week. And we're sitting at, if you see the enrollment just for Glen Learning Center, there's 97 right now over there. It's 162 who have been through Glen Learning Center with 7 pending. And essentially, we know for a fact most likely all 7 are going.
This is our response to the pandemic and the behaviors that we are seeing post-pandemic. That was asked a few months ago, a few board meetings ago, what were we going to do about that? And so we can use ESSER funds, CARES Act funds to do this up until the fall of 2024. So we do have 2 years that we could use this, and so after 2 years, we'd reevaluate and say, okay, is this something that is working that we want our school system to continue to do? Any other questions?
You might have to double that number in the hopes of reducing it. You know what I mean? I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, how are you gonna allot like certain amounts, 6, 8, and K5?
Yeah,
Is there a certain percentage gonna be? I know you have more kids based on, but I don't know where the. I mean, of course, we know we have issues across the board, really, but I didn't know if you had an allotment set. So, 20 are gonna come from elementary, and 25 are gonna come from middle, or how that's gonna work. It's just gonna be case by case, and
Yeah, we were gonna definitely do case by case.
Yeah.
We had a meeting with Communities in Schools today, and they currently monitor our SST program, and we know that across the schools that they serve, there's 16 current students who've reached Tier 3 that they don't know what else to do.
Sure.
And so we know that we're looking at those 16 already, if this is endorsed, for a potential placement and a conversation with parents about here's where we are, because we have the documentation and support and progress monitoring to say we've tried everything. And essentially that's why we haven't really allocated an allotment per school or even per grant band, because we know that our schools could do some more too.
Sure. And some of us are okay with blue and gold presentations, by the way. Just it's fine. It's fine to Marcus.
Some of them.
A lot of us.
Majority of us.
Most of us are okay with blue and gold.
So
But
40
Miss Miller, she's okay with blue and gold, too, I'm sure.
So the number 45, is that based on what you've seen the past couple of years? You're like, this is probably the number that we're going to be?
Well, we just knew at capacity it would be a max of 45 at any given time, because we only have 3 teachers.
Right.
And so we didn't want more than 15 in a classroom.
Now, is that all the capacity? I mean, I'm just kind of playing off what Mr. Holsey said. I mean, this could be something that you need to expand, because that's what I hear from teachers is I got to send, that's what we brought up. We're sending, this student down to the principal's office. They're sitting outside the hall for a few minutes and they come back into the class. Well, that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
We're trying to alleviate that problem to where we can actually teach the kids that are in the classroom.
Yeah.
And the ones that don't have the behavior issues, you're going out and say, we'll give you some support and try to teach you. And,
Right. That's
but
exactly
what if that ends up being 90, and then what do you, at that point, is that something, I mean, I'm just looking at it and saying, is the capacity at racks, if we needed 90, would it be there?
You gotta understand,
I'm just asking a question.
We're still gonna have the tribunal piece.
Right, sure.
Okay, so you're still, is the capacity at racks to go higher than that? So where you see max 45, that means max 45 at one time.
Right.
I mean, that.
These are going to be constantly.
It's ever-
Is the capacity at racks there as it sits now? No. No, not as it sits now. We've talked about that. But there are some space there that we can move around that we might make it happen.
Was Morningstar? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, is it also a possibility, reaching the max that they require for us to hire more additional teaching staff?
Is it a possibility? Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We got the funding from the CARES Act funds,
Right.
right? And this
We,
is
for
going
2
towards
years,
that.
for 2 years.
For 2 years?
For 2 years.
And then after 2 years, we have to decide, is this something we want to keep based on the data we've seen, or is this something we want to, are we going to be, it might be in a situation where we say, can we afford it?
Right.
Well, and can we staff it if we're being completely
That's the problem.
transparent?
Right.
Because
Right.
there's still a stigma around Glen Learning Center and RACs, and right now, the positions, there's some positions posted that we haven't filled. So we got to do a good job of rebranding and marketing. Ms. Seals is planning with Ms. Shue a job fair specific for Horizons Academy, so that we can potentially get some people through and talk about the opportunity and how significant it is. So hopefully we can staff it.
And right now, Glen Learning Center, Coastal Academy, and Morningstar, those kids they do not mingle. They're kept separate at all times.
Right.
And so we would have to do the same thing with the Bright Beginnings and the newcomers, can't keep them separate.
The Morningstar, and I think making the decision that was made was the best thing for in the interest of our students and the teachers for sure. What's going on out there? Like, I'm just kind of, are we transitioning back? Or is this a permanent thing? And it's okay if it is, but I was just curious about where they stand.
We
And you
are
may not
asking
know.
the same questions of
Right.
the state right now, and, the state was under the understanding it was gonna be temporary. But at this point in time, there have been no renovations to the school facility out there. So,
Yeah.
we're definitely asking the same questions and looking into it.
But our job is to educate those kids.
I understand, and that's
so
why
until they tell us we have to move them, we're not.
it was a shame what was happening, not
Yes.
only to the kids, but to our teachers and parapros and everybody else that's out there. But I just didn't know if there'd been any movement with regard to them trying to
Yeah,
transition
that's
back.
still the best location for that.
Sure,
group.
I understand, and then that's fine. And can we, the report you sent me about, I'll call it, what you call it, they're new to the country numbers. You did send me that report. Can we talk about that next meeting? Can we?
Sure.
If that's, I guess it's pretty
But that was,
outdated.
I didn't send you new to the country. I sent you the.
Yeah, I'm still kind of
yeah.
digesting a lot of it,
Yeah.
so maybe it's not exactly what I think.
I sent
it
you
is.
the increase that we've seen in every demographic.
Right, okay, yeah, that's right. It has everything on it, that's right. But maybe we can talk about that too.
But I do have a report for new to the country each month and their levels.
Is it by school, or can you break it out by
Yes.
school?
You want to do it next board meeting?
Sure, we can.
Any other questions concerning the New Horizons?
I just want to say thank y'all for digging into this. I think it's a great thing to try to see if we can have some early intervention with our students and, you know, start them in elementary school if we're seeing the markers for this type of therapeutic learning, and with the hope that it doesn't progress, you know, into middle and high school. And in the long run, it's great for those kids, the parents, you know, hopefully in the household, the strategies that they learn transition there. And then also with our kids that, you know, are disrupted by those children that would be better served maybe in a Bright Beginning setting, the kids left behind in the classroom will have more uninterrupted instruction. So I really appreciate y'all looking into this. Ms. Gibbons and I saw a presentation by the Henry County School Board at one of our conferences where they discussed this, and it's, you know, I know you've made a visit there. So it's a pretty impressive strategy, and I think they are seeing some improvements in markers to show that it's worth the effort. So thank you.
And we want to support y'all and the teachers there, because if, you know, I encourage y'all, if y'all have ever been, I think most of y'all probably have, if you've ever visited that location, it is certainly challenging. There are some wonderful stories, but every minute seems to be a challenge for them out there. And so we want to support and not forget the fact that they're at RACS and it's, you know, satellite campus or whatever, to make sure we're supporting them any way we can with what they need, because like I said, it can be challenging from day to day. Very rewarding and exciting and wonderful at the same time, but sometimes it can be tough. So
I think that's one thing Mr. Haywood's
That's not
tried to
lost
do
on us.
this year is truly make it like a school.
Sure.
And not be institution,
Right.
you know, not
Sure.
an institution for
Or
it.
the
And I
students.
believe with us, going through with rebranding and educating the public, letting them know, you know, it's another opportunity for another chance to improve themselves. I think the branding is right. We got to give it a better brand. And I appreciate what you all have done to present this to us.
All right, Bob, you want to come up and moving to 3A?
It's our annual E-rate expenditure time. We're privileged here to get the money from USAC, Universal Services Administration. This year, pretty straightforward. I'm looking to upgrade our network switch environment across the entire district. The switches we're running now are HP switches. They've been in place 10+ years. They work, but this is next generation switch. They're universal switches. Right now we have to have core switches, edge switches, all different types of hardware. This collapses that into one piece of hardware that we could provision to do multiple jobs across the district. It has the ability to secure network. That's the big thing right now, cybersecurity. It has a lot of capabilities in that area for segmentation, breaking pieces of network off, securing pieces of the network. It has a cloud management platform that allows my staff to manage the switches without having to go and physically touch them. They can do all of that virtually from a cloud-based platform. And I could bore you to death with all the technology that goes with it, but this is a really good move for the school district. Like I said, our switches are aging out now. they serve their purpose, but you can't upgrade the functionality and add some of the new bells and whistles that are available with today's technology. This will position Glen County Schools for future growth and expansion of our network, especially with our Chromebook environment. We now have over 15,000 Chromebooks, plus about 8,000 computers and all the laptops that we have. So this will tie all of that together and provide us with a way to manage it a lot more efficiently. The cost of it is $1.2 million. E-rate pays 80% of that, so the school system's expenditure would be $247,179.50.
Any questions for Mr. Schwartz?
You got E-rate for Ford Expeditions? Or anything like that, or buses, or police cars, or anything?
No, sir.
I mean, E-rate's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, to me, we've been able to add
It's a
some great
great
technology
way
over
to
the years
spend our
because of
money.
it, sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, 3E, Eureka Match.
So, essentially, this is just a quote to refresh our current curriculum, but only 6-8. And the reason why it's just 6-8 at this time is because we're doing an enhancement in our Eureka Math materials. So instead of purchasing what we've always purchased, Eureka Math actually this year improved their curriculum to Eureka Math Square, and the enhancements are more kid-friendly. The Lexile levels are a little bit lower and can be scaffolded. And obviously you don't want the readability or the comprehension of the comprehending the text to hinder the student from being able to do the math. And a lot of teachers thought that was the case. And so 6-8, the principals voted to go with Eureka Math Squared this year in our refresh versus Eureka Math, just the general materials. And I actually brought examples so you all could see, so you wouldn't think that I was inflating the truth. This is the old book, which is boring and blah. And so now,
Why did we buy it then?
well, this because this was
all they had then.
this is all they had. This is all they had, and so they updated them, and so this is the new teachers edition, which is very different. It's more user friendly, easy to follow, has way more resources in it that will be more engaging for kids. And then this is the student workbook, which is equally more engaging and more kid-friendly than what Eureka put out the first time. So we're choosing to adopt this a year ahead of elementary. I didn't want you all to think, well, why not elementary? They're focusing more on some literacy initiatives, and so I wanted to go ahead and get math because we've seen some issues in grade 6, and so this would help out with the grade. And I can tell you the price isn't, but maybe, and when we looked at the quote, it was like $3,000 difference from the old Eureka versus refreshing to the new.
Any questions about the Eureka Math Square?
It's the same program, just a new
Same
edition.
same math, just, yeah, new addition.
Given an overview of Eureka Math, when I was the math coordinator 3 years ago, I was not a fan of it until I went to the training and watched it. And I've seen our test scores in elementary school go up as the Eureka Math is rolled out. But we haven't seen test scores in 2 years because we haven't been able to compare ourselves to anything. And so I wanted to at least keep the program until we could see if is it working in middle school like it worked in elementary school. I mean, that's where we're at with that.
There's some additional enhancements. I can tell you all if you want to know those enhancements. But either way, we have to refresh, so we'll either be spending 147 or 150.
Right. Let's see. Anything else for you two?
No, that's
Mr. Waters.
All right, good evening. I am kind of filling in for Mr. Blackerby, and so I will go over the notes he's given me, but the first is Goodyear Elementary Cafeteria, and basically this was a discussion that began with Dr. Dawson and Mr. Boudreau a while back, and Mr. Blackerby's kind of taken this over, but the cafeteria seating in Goodyear is in really bad shape. It needs to be replaced. The conditions of the seats have deteriorated. We're fixing seats every month right now. So basically, we want to replace all the seating and also upgrade the painting and also add some window screens. And we are asking Palmer Hamilton Designs to do that in the amount of $119,000.
Questions there?
Okay.
GA gym addition bleachers?
And basically, the auxiliary gym at Glen Academy, we are not planning on doing many events in there. It's pretty much a practice classroom type facility, but in the case we do have a function in there, like a wrestling tournament or a volleyball, we want to be able to have some seats. So these are portable seats. Dr. Spence, Mr. Blackerby, and I drove down to Kings Bay, the naval base, and they have the exact same thing in their gym. They're very small. I can easily fold them up and put them in a closet, and they're very sturdy. I mean, they're really incredible. It's the first time in the 26 years I've been in athletics that I've seen bleachers like that you can just fold up and put in a closet. So basically, it would give us 300 seats. We have plenty of storage there to put them in storage, so we'd only roll them out when we need to. We could also roll them to the football field if we have to, or roll them to the Glen Academy, the main gym that we have right now. So they're very functional, and so we're asking for the board to approve that in the amount of $46,475, and it'll be 300 seats total.
I have a quick question on that, but I've got to get back to the quote. So under the possible ads and deducts, I think it's probably on the next page from what we're looking at, it's saying to provide a total of 12. Does that mean that would be $8,000 more? So 12 in addition to the 20? Is that what they're trying to say?
That is I think there was a deal there that you get a couple additional if we got it in the time, so I think that's why it says the 12, I believe.
With 12 additional? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The way I figured it, this will seat 300 with the 20.
That's right.
I looked these up online just to see what they look like. They had some with seat spacers in between, because it looks like, I mean, there are 5 seats, 3 rows of 5 seats, and I couldn't really tell based on the picture, but it doesn't look like the seats are very wide. So if you did have 15 people on there, you might be kind of scrunched up. I don't know how much that would add to the cost, or if that was even
They were,
discussed.
I believe they're 24 inches
Yeah,
per
I probably
seat.
look wide like
Are they?
I
Okay.
feel like I could sit in it.
Well, the picture made it look kind of
Yeah,
narrow.
they look dingy. They look like that. That's why when I saw them, they were actually really sturdy and large enough to
So the ones you
fit.
saw, they were the same?
Exact same.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why we drove down there, just to kind of put our eyes on it, because it does, when you look at them, you're like, yeah, I'm not too sure about it, but
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Well,
it's,
thank you for looking into this.
Sure.
I think it'll provide a little more use for that space than
Yes.
one that doesn't have seating. at all.
Definitely. Let's skip ahead to.
Got 3.
Okay, kind of changing directions here. This is something that's kind of been on my mind for a while, and I've had a group from the community come in and visit with me about this, and I just, thinking about it, talking to a few others, I think it's time. Everybody in here knows Coach Adams, and she's been a staple in the community forever. Not going to go over a whole lot about her because everybody knows, but she started teaching Glen Academy in the early 1960s, and she retired way after I graduated. But 637 wins. I can keep going on and on and on. Couple Final Fours, 11 region track titles, 24 region championships, and cross country. She coached cheerleading, and she even coached tennis. She did everything she was asked to do in this community, but the biggest thing is the impact she had on kids. And she was a mentor to a ton of student athletes and the girls at Glen Academy, and she was a mom to those girls. If anybody went to Glen Academy, you know that. But her teaching, her coaching career speaks for itself, but just the impact she's had on kids, and I know Dr. Spence's work with her is just amazing. And, she's getting up there in years, although she's doing really, really well, but I think it's time that we do something to honor her. And there's a lot, we have a system in place that anytime we do something like that, it's done through fundraising and not out of general fund dollars. But I believe we have enough folks that are interested in the community and former players that we can get the money raised to name the court after her and put her name on the court at Glen Academy. 40-plus years of service, and she still comes to games, and she still goes everywhere, and she's still helping girls in our community, even though she's been retired for 10 years. So, I think there's a time and place to do this, and I don't take this lightly. Anytime you name something after someone, it needs to be taken seriously. But if there's anybody that deserves it, it's certainly Coach Adams. So would like to ask the board to consider that and approve
She
it.
not only was a mom to the girls, she was a mom to a lot of the guys too. She wouldn't be afraid to snatch somebody up and jerk them out. Meaning me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Coach Adams, wherever you're at. I think this is well deserved. And
Absolutely.
I look forward to the day it happens.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's see, Ms. Haywood, you get to close it out, I think.
Good evening to everyone. Tonight, we'd like to ask the board to consider a proposal. Naviance is a program that would serve as a replacement platform for the Georgia Career Information System. Back in 2010, the Georgia General Assembly enacted the Bridge Bill, which requires for us to provide career planning and support for students in grades 6 through 12. Every year there are different activities that we are required by law to complete. Once that law was passed, the GCIS system was put in place and it was provided by the state. The state has since discontinued that program. And we're now also required to provide a career aptitude assessment to students as well as a part of this Bridge Bill. The state did provide a possible solution for that. U-Science, many of you may have heard of that program. But it is difficult to implement based on the amount of time it takes for students to complete those assessments, which is about 90 minutes. And so we have gone out and tried to investigate to find a suitable replacement so that we'll be able to capture and monitor that data for our students. And so we'd like to ask that the board consider allowing us to purchase the Naviance system, which would work in that regard to help us with monitoring and tracking students because we're required to do that by Bridge Bill. We are asking through Title IV grant funds. It's a block grant that we get every year, and it would cost us initially $73,334. That would include professional development for our school counselors, our CTAE teachers, those who would be helping with the implementation and monitoring of this. But the cost would decrease by half following that year. The cost is about $7 per student, and so after that would be $45,934 out of that federal grant. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
This be used.
Yes, and Georgia 411 as well.
We used to have Georgia 401 that the state provided at no cost. We have to have something.
Yes.
Because they don't provide that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, is this something that the students would use while in the classroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They can use it in a classroom. They can use it outside of school. There's a mobile also functionality with it as well. Parents can also log in to see what activities their students have completed. It's pretty stellar if you want to know the truth. Students can, through the One App application through Georgia, students can apply through one application for many schools through Georgia. All of that functionality can take place through this platform in addition to sending any official transcripts. It's just got a myriad of resources that would truly benefit our kids with regard to career planning and post-secondary options. So, and again, we're required by law to monitor and implement those activities, grades 6 through 12, so this would provide us a platform in which to do that. Yes, ma'am.
How do we determine, trying to think of a way to say this without coming right out and saying it and asking the question, but so for instance, we were talking at one of our recent forums, a Republican Women's Luncheon we talked about Lucy Calkins and how sometimes we get involved in programs and over time they start to slant maybe one way or another that we're not comfortable with or whatever. How do we ensure that, programs like this, when you're talking about helping students determine who they are, and how do we determine we're focused on things in the classroom and career building and let's find out what your interests are rather than other things that people with ulterior motives could be pushing kids towards. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And to answer your question, when that says to help you who you are, it's what attributes do you have that will be successful in specific careers.
And that makes sense.
Yes.
But there are ways to, slant
Yes, sir.
things and everything that's out there these days. And I just want to make sure we're spending money on things that are going to be beneficial to all kids
Yes,
and
sir.
not do anything counterproductive to what we're trying to do with the classroom.
Absolutely.
So,
The purpose of the platform, as I mentioned, is directly related to career planning and exploration. So I don't anticipate that would be a challenge, but I can certainly make sure by, if you all decide to approve this purchase, we can make sure with the vendor that there isn't anything that would align with that. At this point, there hasn't been anything.
The question just came up with this, but it kind of goes for all programs.
Yes, sir.
Anything new that we're doing.
Yes, sir.
To make sure it's tested and true and in line with our goals and what we're trying to accomplish. So,
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
To further answer your question, Dr. Glynn and Ms. Miller and I have been talking about that. If we buy textbooks, someone is gonna read every word in the textbook. So we're gonna monitor that very closely. And so with Lucy Calkins, we have found that they can upload different things. It might not be the same as what it was the year before. And so we're talking with them to make sure it's the same as what we purchased, rather than them being able to change things up. But I understand what you're saying.
But we also didn't read every word too, because some
I
of what we
understand.
have.
Listen, is that possible really?
To read every word of a science textbook? Yes.
Yeah. I couldn't do it.
We have the community engagement committee now for that purpose. We started meeting with them last month.
Yes.
And I've had one person back out because we told them, your job is to review the curriculum for these personal or political.
Everyone's
agendas.
radar is up about certain things, especially in our area, and we just have to be careful about what we're investing in, I think. So.
I just have one more question about the Naviance.
Yes, ma'am.
I think there are other districts in Georgia and maybe even our area that use them.
That is correct.
Have you all talked to those districts to see how?
Yes,
how
ma'am.
it's
As a matter of
working?
fact, that's what caused us to investigate Naviance. There are, I want to say, somewhere around 40% of the systems in the state of Georgia that are currently using Naviance. I'm a part of a group of basically they're school counselor coordinators, and we send out questions. I've talked with several of them, talked with Savannah, Chatham, they use it. Most of the metro districts use it. I've reached out to several different people, and everyone has nothing but positive things to say about this program. So our school counselors had the opportunity to demo it, and they are chomping at the bit in hopes that you will approve this purchase. Just because of the functionality of it. This kit is very kid-friendly. It allows kids to learn more about different colleges and universities. There are even 3D virtual tours that students can take. It's just got a myriad of different resources that we believe will be a positive benefit to helping our students with career planning.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, that is all I have.
I have a question. And obviously, it could be out of order, Mr. Lakin, but we didn't do invocation today. And I was hoping that we did, and I know we do it on board meeting night, and even Ms. Miller was like, we don't do invocation or the pledge on work session, but I was hoping we could, just because of Mr. Blackerby. I was hoping that we could lift him up in prayer, and if that's not appropriate and we can't do it, then, but I just at least wanted to ask. He's a part of us, and I obviously a critical
Board member
person.
could take a personal privilege and make it.
Well, actually,
That could be.
I had planned on, before we went into executive session, so I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't want to bring it up in front of, until we got through it. And when I didn't know if Mr. Blackley would be here tonight or not, but I did want to at least acknowledge, and then also planned on doing it at the Tuesday meeting when it's, public, and have more people here. But Mike is battling an illness and a personal illness, and we do want to make sure, that the folks that do have faith believe and raise him up, as you said, and hope that things are going well. He has had a very positive prognosis, I guess, or diagnosis, and as far as the cure. And I know me personally, I have reached out and also have him in our family, have him in his family. We both have, he has a set of twins that are my set of twins' age, and they were in play dates together back when they were little. So, and Mike and his wife Kendra, we all went to school together, grew up together. So it is very personal to me, and I do hope that everyone will continue to pray for him and his family and what he's going through. So hopefully, thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Green, and hopefully things will continue to get better for him, and he will be here back with us. I know that he is coming. You may want to allude to some of the stuff as far as the work schedule and whatnot, Dr. Spence, but he will be available, to us, and he is doing all he can do to get back. So, Mike, if you are listening or you're watching, we are thinking about you and Kendra and the kids, and hopefully, things will continue to get better for you. So, continue to fight. I know people have approached me up here working and have seen him around, and everyone is in full support. I do want to thank Dwayne, Mr. Bradham, as I said out in the hallway. Thank you for stepping up and doing what you need to do and trying to take care of us as well as Mr. Tootin and everyone else that has been doing it. Coach Waters, thank you for everyone pitching in, and I think that's what everyone will continue to do. I don't want to belabor the thing, but again, I just want to make sure. Thank you for bringing it to my attention before we broke into executive session. I did want to mention it, in public, that we are thinking about him, and anything that we can do as a family, as obviously we're all family here, and we will obviously do anything that we can for him and his job and anything, the duties that he has. So please keep him in your prayers if you will, and again, thank you for bringing it up. All right, well, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session for land, legal, and personnel.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Holmes, second by Mr. Gibbons. Ms. Gibbons, any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. And then go back into open session.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Yergin.
Second.
Second by Mr. Edgy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Thank you for that.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Dr. Yergin.
Second. I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Edgy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned at 7:59. Thank you.
I have a, real fast, I have a